Alright, and now for the last piece of the puzzle. After doing it on a small scale, we're going to do the same thing with the full image. And I thought, because we're all stuck in quarantine right now, that maybe doing a little bit of New Orleans as our background would be a nice way to show what you can do with this. This is a line cutter. When I'm working with a background that I want to have a straight angle on, I will use this in order to make sure that everything is nice and even before I fully set up the image. I want to make sure that all of the sides of it are nice and straight and have no extra edges to them. This, I'm trying to get rid of these little white pieces because they will prevent it from framing neatly. And then one more through the top to make that straight. Now that we have our base image, let's think about this the same way we thought about the last one. We've got a bunch of colors to work with already, and we want to keep in that range so that we can create something new that doesn't jump out too much. So in the picking for this one, I found in the same book this image, and if you notice, what I'm noticing here is we have a ton of blue and a ton of red, a good amount of white here, but there's green that's popping out, and if I make use of that green, I can change what the focus is here and pull away from what we have there, but still base it on the image so it doesn't stick out too much. So I'm going to move the base image right now and keep that in mind while I cut pieces. This, because I want to utilize these boxes on their own, these windows, I'm going to just cut along that line and the line above, because I want the pieces that are the closest to the color scheme that we're using already. Same as last time. I want to stay in, I want to bring out these greens and the concrete colors, but they're going to have to take some work before they fit in perfectly. So how can I bring this more green? I need to adjust the overall picture. This would be too much because it'll overpower everything else, but we're trying to keep everything as balanced as we can as we work. I'm going to cut this into pieces because, just like last time, pieces that are the same shape can be stacked on top of one another to create 3D effects and use more images in less space, because the biggest problem with this piece I'm cutting is that it was so big that it wouldn't fit in the full image very well. And that's something that you always have to keep in mind when you're using a set background, is that that's as big as it's ever going to get. So you need to make sure you can work within that space. And when I say you can use the same shape over and over to create a 3D effect, I mean you can use the same shape over and over to really accentuate the colors and spaces that you're working with without taking as much room. Because this was almost the full size of the image, and now look at it. Now that's something that I can use. But what else can I use in this color scheme? And I'll put that aside and pick in largely the same way that I picked for the last video. And so this, I like these old science textbooks and collected learning things because they have a ton of nice diagrams in them telling you, giving you drawings of things. And I like this. I'm thinking about the color of the building in the background and the color of the stop sign and the Clover Grill sign. They're all in the reds and oranges, so those work well for me in the same way that the greens do. And again, this book is maybe $1 at a thrift store. With a pandemic going on, it's probably not very easy to get these kinds of things. But as long as you're looking around through things that people don't mind getting rid of, you can often find some pretty interesting things to work with. And now I'm noticing things like the blue and the square shape of the buildings in the French Quarter and the layout of the streets. It's one of the most square places in the city. Everywhere else our roads are curving, and so I'm looking for roads. I'm looking for red colors, and car magazines often have a ton of red because that's everyone's favorite color of car. This is how I think about what kind of images I need to look for, is by thinking about what they might be in. And this gives me that same theme, that redness, those squares, building up the same patterns and ideas that we've been looking at through the rest of these. And so I'm going to look through this last book, but another thing when I'm starting with the background, I do pick a lot less images because I'm much more careful about what I'm putting in those images. And this is a little bit of cheating because I looked through this once before, but there we go. Sometimes once you've got enough material, you just know things that you'll find and you just need to remember where they are. And because I've been collecting a lot of books, I have a lot of options to use. And so now that I've done a pretty good set of picking, I think it's time to start cleaning those up and then arranging them on our final image. I'm going to use a piece of cardstock as a backing once I get going in order to keep everything neat and clean.